Hello my friends! Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is about grief. It's a natural emotion that everybody experiences at some point in their life, and moving through grief requires a specific form of neuroplasticity. Before we begin, I'd like to use this platform to pay my respects to those families in Iran who lost their loved ones in the protests against enforcing mandatory hijab laws after the death of a 22-year-old girl, Mahsa Amini. And I'm gonna dedicate this video about grief to the women in Iran fighting for freedom and basic human rights. I strongly encourage everyone who is watching this video from outside Iran to take a moment and search the hashtags and links I'll put in the description to have a better understanding of what's been happening in my beautiful country. Whether or not you're experiencing grief right now, either mild grief, moderate, or extreme, today we'll discuss how we conceptualize grief at an emotional and a logical level. And we're gonna learn information that will help us navigate through this process. The grief associated with death is familiar to most of us, but individuals grieve in connection with a variety of losses throughout their lives, such as unemployment, ill health, or the end of a relationship. We are also capable of achieving great attachments to animals, and this process can be because of the loss of our pet. Also, the loss of an object or a thing can feel quite significant, like the loss of a wedding ring or even a seashell that we collected with somebody on the beach. You can also think of the loss of a thing that was very meaningful to you and you left it behind through immigration to another country. It is obvious that how intense grief feels and how long it lasts scales with how close we were with a person, animal, or thing. The important thing to point out is grief is a process, and like any biological or psychological event, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And knowing that where you are in this process can be beneficial. Some studies show that there are 5 different stages of grief, but not everybody experiences all of them. The different stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Denial is a refusal to accept the new reality that the person or animal or thing is gone. Anger is one in which the individual recognizes that the person or animal or thing is gone, but their body and their mind go into a motivated state. Bargaining or negotiating phase is somehow refusing to accept the reality in a way blended with denial and thinking. Like, well, if I just don't think about it, it won't be real. Depression phase is like this: why should I go on living? And acceptance is the internalization emotionally that it's gonna be okay. Other studies show that the brain areas that associated with motivation, craving, and pursuit are some of the primary areas that are activated in states of grief. In order to really understand what grief is, let's try to discard of all prior notion of grief as just a state of sadness. And for the next couple of minutes, let's think about grief as a motivational state, a desire for something specific. Imagine yourself extremely thirsty, for instance, on a very hot day, and a glass of water is right in front of you. And you so badly want to drink that water, but no matter how hard you try and reach it, it always shifts just outside your reach. If you can imagine that, you are touching into the experience of grief. Grief also activates brain's reward center. Reward-related activity is the activity of neurons that's associated motivational state. This is very important to understand that grief is not just about sadness. It's a state of sadness and it's a state of desire and reaching for something. Grief is both a state of pain but also a state of wanting. And when we lose somebody, that state of wanting and desire drives an activation state within us. The activation of those reward centers puts us into a state of waiting for something to happen. We have 3 dimensions in our brain that define our relationship to people, animals, and things. If we can understand these three dimensions, then we can understand why it hurts so much and why it takes time in order to re-understand or remap our association when those people, animal or things are not accessible to us. These three dimensions are space, time, and closeness. Space like where is somebody or something. Time meaning how long would it take me to reach them or for them to reach me. And closeness in terms of emotional closeness. If you want to understand grief and how to move through it, you need to know that your map of people is not a map of emotional closeness per se. It's a map of emotional closeness, aka attachment, that is braided in with your map of where they are in physical space and where they are in time. If you get this concept, then it becomes obvious as to why after the loss of somebody or an animal or object, this map has to be reordered. When somebody is taken away from us, the memories persist for some period of time, and they are still linked to our feelings of attachment. In this case, our entire memory bank and our ability to predict when and where they will be, and therefore when we can feed our attachment to them again, that whole map is obliterated, except that the attachment itself has not been disrupted. Grief is the process of unbraiding and untangling that relationship between space, time, and attachment. This is very hard to do, and for some people it's almost impossible to do. So please keep in mind to get professional help, specifically if you are in a complicated grief. If you've lost somebody or animal that was vitally important to you, it should make perfect sense to you as to why you keep looking for that person or expecting them to contact you every day again. Those expectations, those predictions that the brain is making are entirely normal. It's simply an activation of this map that involves closeness, space, and time. The reordering of that map that's required in order to move through the grieving process is going to involve some remapping. And you as the person grieving know which element or dimension within that map needs to focus on more for you. Psychologists and neuroscientists agree that the best way to approach moving through grief is actually to remap these three dimensions while maintaining the close sense of attachment to the person. The idea that someone or animal does not exist anymore is not something that the brain can easily conceptualize, because a brain as an organ that makes predictions tends to rely more on experience than knowledge, and the knowledge that someone or an animal or a thing is gone is something that we can understand logically, but that emotionally is very hard to undo. Grab the dedicated blocks of time, perhaps every day or every other day, to spend some effort and practice as rational grieving. There is no reason to convince yourself that you were not close to that person you lost. You want to anchor yourself to that attachment, but you need to start making predictions and understanding about how you are going to engage with that attachment. It will be really helpful to think, feel, and maybe even write about the attachment to the person, animal, or thing. If the process of moving through grief adaptively in a healthy way involves maintaining the attachment but uncoupling that attachment from space and time we had before, the question is, where should we place our expectation of them? The answer will vary from person to person depending on personal beliefs. It's however essential that no matter what you believe, you have some firm representation of where that person, animal, or thing is, so you can plug it into this three-dimensional map and braid it again. Also, accessing quality of sleep on a regular basis gave you another tool if you are somebody who is healing into grief or is challenged with the grief. And the most powerful way to do this is to view sunlight very close to waking. Everything about reordering this map of space-time closeness in your mind involves neuroplasticity. Regulating your cortisol level through viewing sunlight early in the day and avoiding bright lights from artificial sources in the evening That's going to allow you to sleep better and get neuroplasticity and be in the best emotional state to navigate the grieving process. I hope this video would not give you just some information about grief and people or animal you've lost, but also give you a sense of why it is that the people or animals who are still in your life have such profound meaning for you. And I would encourage you to not lean away from, but rather to lean into the building of those memories to build up a richer and richer set of experiences and emotional attachments. Because while the process of grieving is in direct relation to how close we are attached to people or animals, there are ways to move through it. And of course, it is the depth of our attachments and the number and the depth of meaning of experiencing that we share with others and with animals that makes life so rich and worth living. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to comment your feedback, leave a like, and share this with your community. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.